All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Red Rain episode 167. Please welcome in your host, Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter, sporting his Diamondbacks hat and his streaky University of Arizona sweatshirt, which had been riding a four-game winning streak until yesterday. But now Kyle's coming back with it in hopes that we can get back on a streak.
I think
It's a
the
big
issue
challenge.
was I didn't wear it the week before, so maybe the trend is when I wear it on Monday, we win the next Sunday because I didn't
All
wear it
right,
during the bye week.
I'm with you, man. Thank you. The good vibes are important, particularly after this frustrating loss once again to the Seahawks, six straight loss to them, and fifth straight loss to Geno Smith, who's 5-0 against the Cardinals. I was joking with Dan Viennes, the iconic Seattle Seahawks podcaster, when I was on his show, that Geno was 0-5 versus the 49ers until he scampered in to beat them in Santa Clara. So I was hoping that that Kyler Murray could get off the Seahawks and Geno Smith-Schneid yesterday. It didn't happen. We got another chance in 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks. So, and hopefully, we can get off that Schneid then. But we got a lot of work to do. We can't overlook the Vikings in Minnesota, obviously, during what is a holiday week, which will have its fair share of distractions. But this team, we'll see how resolute they are in trying to correct what went wrong in Minnesota, in Seattle, which was kind of startling, to tell you the truth. James Conner and the running game just stifled by this Mike McDonald's run attack defense, spearheaded by our new version of Aaron Donald, Leonard Williams. He was a main factor in up front for the Seahawks, and they got it done. Here I was telling Dan Viennes that our guys were whooping ass up front, which they had been. And I was very confident coming into the game, particularly since the Seahawks have not been stout defending the run, that we could impose our will on them. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen. And the first question I had about it was that, was Kyle and I argued last week that we thought the Cardinals should stay with Kelvin Beachum for the sake of continuity because the line had been playing so well. Not to say that Beachum's a better player than Jonah Williams. And in this game, Jonah Williams appeared to play pretty well from the times that I watched, and we'll see what happens, when I watch more. But in terms of continuity is a tricky thing with offensive lines. I mean, sometimes change can kind of, create a bit of an uncertainty, and maybe some different quirks in the chain of readjusting to, and it might not have made a difference at all if the interior of our line didn't play better, but sometimes it can affect the whole thing. And Beach was coming off a game where he had a perfect, did not give up one pressure or a sack against a good Jets pass rush, and there was just momentum going there. And we were thinking, no, it was probably a good idea to stick with him. Now, so let's see if the Cardinals' offensive line can bounce back with a vengeance in Minnesota this week. It would be huge for them to do that. So, I mean, it's kind of a moot point, but it did cross my mind, so I wanted to bring it up. But in terms of continuity and chemistry and all five men working as one, I thought it was risky to make a change at that point, and it's just weird that the Cardinals put forth the worst offensive line performance of their season. I can't think of another game where they got dominated that much up front and just stifled in the running game as much as they did. And Connor being held to the lowest amount of yards that he's had in ages. I mean, I can't remember when he came out of a game with, like, last on our list, 7 carries for 8 yards, 1.1 average. Trey Benson had 4 carries for 18 yards, 4.5. Amari DiMercato had 1 carry for 14 yards. Kyler Murray had 2 carries for 9 yards. So it was 14 carries for 49 yards, 3.5. And in a game that, was more pass heavy than typically the Cardinals would want. On the plus side, you got a historic performance from Trey McBride. 12 catches for 133 yards, 11.1 average on 15 targets. McBride is our go-to guy, and that was one of the shining silver linings of this game was McBride's play.
Just as a reference point for people, if as a receiver or a tight end, your target share for the team is around like 30%, you're one of the highest in the league. That's over a season. Justin Jefferson's, Devontae Adams. Trey McBride was at 45% target share, 15 targets out of 34 total passes, which is crazy. I don't know if I've seen a total like that all season, at least not for the Cardinals.
Right. And it was clear that this was the Achilles heel in the and weak spot of the Seahawks defense was that they couldn't cover them. And the 2 biggest frustrations for the Cardinals has to be, how about that third down conversion, a pass where McBride caught the ball and seemingly right below the line on a first down in the first half in a 0-0 game. And all he has to do is roll over to get the yard and doesn't. And then on 4th and inches, Gannon decides to punt. And at that point in the game, 0-0, and the defense playing pretty well, coming off a stop. I sort of get it, but at the same time, what a missed opportunity that was. That was just a bizarre play. And then, in the red zone, the continued McBride wide open on 2 consecutive plays, and Kyler, doesn't see him, just doesn't pull the trigger. And they wind up kicking a field goal. That's just another. I mean, I don't know. It's just bizarre to think that we're, 11 games into this, and McBride doesn't have a single TD catch on the season. It's bizarre. And, we'll probably need another Kurt Warner video to show us how wide open he was. I mean, he was wide open between 2 defenders. They weren't, playing him. It's just a giveaway. And that's very frustrating. So looking back on the tape, hopefully that's something that they can finally correct. I know that Marvin Harrison Jr. has been more of a target in the red zone. I get that. We can continue to do that, but we got to get, when we got a guy like McBride open against zone defense in the end zone, you got to hit him. I mean, and it's pretty much a straight pass. So that's frustrating. I was frustrated too with Greg Dortch. I mean, he catches a ball over the middle and falls down. I mean, what's going on with Greg Dortch this year? This is not a Dortch-esque kind of effort we're getting from him. I'm sorry, but he's got to get his head on right, and he's got that's a throw and a catch he should take into the end zone off a plant and cut rack yard touchdown. So I'm frustrated with that with George. I don't know what his situation is this year, but and he hasn't been getting, he had 2 targets on the game. You got to command the ball. It was a 5-yard pass that could have been a touchdown, and that was disappointing. I just thought, typical George would have snagged that, done even a reverse pivot if possible, and tried to get that into the end zone down in the red zone there. So that was frustrating too, but frustrating all the way on offense. Highlighted by Kyle. Can you cue up the Kyler interception? Yeah, so I mean, teams are figuring out on 4th downs that the Cardinals are going to do this.
See, they've got a lane right here, and maybe the linebacker comes over and plugs that gap. But I mean, they had the blocks, they had the gap. Connor,
right.
You would assume, can get 1 yard. I mean, maybe not yesterday. His average was 1 yard a carry, but under normal circumstances, you assume he can get 1 yard if you give him that gap right there.
Right. But look at how perfectly Witherspoon plays this play. And one of the mistakes, I think, was Kyler taking way too much of a rounded route. Look at the cushion. That really hurt. I think if he takes off on a straight line and tries to beat Witherspoon more on a straight line, he's got a better chance. So the fact that he took a more rounded route suggests to me that the play was really designed as a run pass option, which but Wilson gets caught kind of maybe too long making the block. So let's show it from here.
And to your point, while people are watching this, watch Kyler's here at the 44 when he starts his run. Look where he ends up at the furthest part backwards.
Right.
47.
Right.
So now we've gone back 3 yards.
Yep. The throw it would have been earlier. Right now. It's a little flip.
Right there.
Right. Yeah, if you're going to take that rounded a route and you're getting chased, strung out by a great
there. Yep. I'm guessing this is Ryman.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ryman's there. Got block on the edge.
Yep.
But then Witherspoon gets free. I can't remember who is that on the edge that was blocking Witherspoon, but you've got now, I guess it was Wilson. So then you've got Ryman's still here. So you've got McBride, you've got Wilson, and you've got Connor kind of lost in no man's land after selling the fake. And then I guess you're right. Yeah, McBride could have been an option here, although I'm guessing it was a designed run the whole way and that this was kind of, it's 4th down. We got to just kind of improvise here.
Well, it's a run pass option for sure because none of these linemen are downfield or trying to make blocks downfield.
That's true. That's true.
And come off the block sooner. And, and Kyler flatten out his path. If it is indeed truly a run option. Or also they could devise a way in which to motion over someone to block the edge who in this case was Witherspoon. So to create a resistance there, and now maybe seal off the edge, and if you do that, you can run a flatter, run, more horizontal run than what we saw. It's too bad. It was just it was a close game, and that play really kind of set the tone. Reminiscent of of the times Kyler sort of goes into a bit of a shell. Of course, didn't help that he was sacked 5 times. This performance from the offensive line, then the 3 big holding calls that negated good plays, a touchdown for Wilson comeback, which Kyler made a superb float to his right to get passing lane to Michael Wilson. Perfect touchdown pass. Called back from a backside hold on PJJ that his hand was maybe probably 3 inches more over to the shoulder side than it probably should have been. It was picky because that kind of stuff happens all the time. But this officiating crew was flag happy. You probably noticed that. Then the hold on Cologne, which was a takedown call, which if he just kind of doesn't take him down all the way, follow him all the way down to the ground, that doesn't happen. And then the hold on Raymond on one of James Conner's best runs. It just was a frustrating day of penalties, of just sort of the offensive line not being in sync as a whole, giving up sacks, and Kyler not being keenly aware of where the pressure was coming from, the worst of which was on that sack where Kyler actually backed up into it when Paris Johnson was riding his man wide of the pocket. Kyler didn't feel the pressure coming from his left, so he just stepped backwards right into the path of the edge rusher and was taken down there. What I'm not sure of is when Kyler was running later and got sort of his bell rung, they're saying now he got the wind knocked out of him. But then on the sidelines, he was, clearly, I thought he'd suffered another major injury the way he was reacting. I mean, holding his, it was quite theatrical, to tell you the truth. And throwing up his arms, throwing the towel over his head. Meanwhile, we nearly got the ball back on a near interception by Kaiser White off a deflection. And there was uncertainty as to whether Kyler could come back in the game, and suddenly they're rushing him into the tent. That all happened so weirdly and in late fashion. Just didn't know what to expect there. And as a look to the teammates, it just looked like game over. And Kyler just had the towel over his head and looked like it was just, he was suffered a devastating injury. Quite a contrast from the week before where he got blasted, got up, dusted himself off, smiled, and then bing, bing. Because you never know, look at what the Commanders did late in their game yesterday. In a game where they were struggling offensively, but suddenly down the stretch got hot and were really hot, red hot, and scoring 2 touchdowns and a field goal in a short amount of minutes to what could have been a tying score to get the game into overtime, except that the kicker, that was maybe the worst special teams performance I've ever seen from any team. But look at the difference. And, Jaden Daniels was frustrated during the game, but when you still have time and you still have an opportunity, you can seize it. And even when the Cardinals had the ball with just under 2 minutes left, down by 10, there was still a chance. Except that, you know, Kyler in the 2-minute drill is just throw it 5 yards and get tackled. It just drives me nuts. You can't, with 2 minutes left and one timeout left, you can't take that amount of. You got to take some shots downfield. You got to score with speed and alacrity. You can't just dump the ball off for 7 yards, get tackled, and then it's 20 seconds in between play. You can't afford it. In that situation, the time is your enemy. You've got to play versus the time. And if you look at what the Commanders did with Jaden Daniels, I mean, the way that they attacked downfield and not just dump, because they needed every precious second of that clock. I mean, when they scored at the end with that incredible one-play touchdown to Terry McLaurin, I mean, it was like 12 seconds left on or 20 seconds left on the clock, 22 seconds. And, so, I mean, they had to do something fast, and they gave it a shot, as is the point. And got it done. But, unfortunately, I don't know if the extent of Kyler's injuries. I don't know if he suffered a rib injury. We don't know if there are elements there, but they put him back in the game, and Gannon downplayed and just said, no, he just had the wind knocked out of him. Well, as a football player, we've all had that happen. It's not devastating. And, Kyler came back in the game. He looked fine. It was just weird how the disparity of 2 weeks ago, this sort of, incredible resiliency from Kyler turned to, what we saw yesterday down the stretch. I think he still has an issue with, dwelling on mistakes and feeling haunted by mistakes and kind of getting into a mental funk because of it. Now, he did make some great throws in the game. Let's cue up the pass to Michael Wilson, the over-the-shoulder catch. I mean, that was fantastic. It was a great dime from Kyler and a great catch from M. Willie. And I had predicted with Dan Viens that our big receivers might have a good day because of the way Juwan Jennings was the guy. The Niners had such a good day against the Seahawks secondary, kind of posting up, using his body and length to get a lot, done in that Niners game.
Yeah, I know Kobe Bryant ended up having the pick 6, but all season the Seahawks defense has kind of been, they've got Witherspoon locking down one side of the field and the rest is just kind of iffy. So I totally understand that. And then you look at, obviously it wasn't a great offensive day for the Cardinals as a whole, but you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson ended up with, my math is correct, just 5 catches on 10 targets for 100 yards, but 5 catches on 11 targets is far lower than you would have expected.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was a great day for the Cardinals defense.
Midfield, and watch for Mr. Jaxson Smith-Njigba on this play.
Yeah, this was a great call. Yep.
Right here.
Where the blitz is coming. This was a great.
All right, now we have the touchdown.
Let's go back to that play for a second. So if you're the Cardinal, if you're Nick Rellis, what adjustments do you make? If you're sending Budda, you got to have one of these defenders in behind him. And if you're sending the middle linebacker, this is just too much cushion.
So let's see here. They're sending.
So you need someone. Thoughts, Kyle?
Like we said before, this is the last This is the last team they'll face with a winning record. Minnesota and Seattle back to back. There are theoretically the two toughest games on their schedule, and beating Minnesota would give them some margin for error when they take on those three NFC West games, because they're still hanging on to first place right now, and it's far from over at this point because they've still got some below 500 teams left on their schedule. And who knows, the 49ers might pack it in if they get to 5-8 and everyone's injured. They might just sit some people down. We'll see. But I feel good about where the Cardinals stand right now. This was a pretty bad game across the board, but like we said off the top, man, Seattle just does this to us. Geno Smith and Seattle have gone through different coaches, three different coordinators. This is just Seattle, man. And you're the one last thing I'll say is your guy Tyler Lockett was held in check. 2 catches for Tyler Lockett this week, but doesn't matter when you have Jaxson Smith-Njigba, who went rampant through the Cardinals secondary. So after all the years of you being worried about Tyler Lockett and how they're going to guard Tyler Lockett in the slot,
Yeah.
they finally had the horses to guard Tyler Lockett, and it was Jaxson Smith-Njigba who had the big day. So I feel good about where the Cardinals stand going into Minnesota. And I don't think
Good.
Minnesota's as good as their record suggests.
Yeah, they've been in a lot of close games and they've been pulling it out, and they're well coached. And I think the Cardinals have been well coached in recent weeks. So I'd like to see the players respond better to the coaching. I'm not going to blame Drew Petzing for anything in what happened yesterday. And I'm not going to suggest that, here comes it was one game. It was not a good game offensively, but got a chance to regroup. And I'm optimistic that they can. Anytime you have James Conner in that backfield and Kyler Murray quarterback, and you got a good offensive line, you got a stud tight end, and you got a merging, bona fide blue chip wide receiver. 2 of them, really. I love Wilson. And then, with MHJ. There's a lot of talent there. And, the question will be how quickly they can get their resolve and their mojo back. So, but, so I wanted to highlight as many of the positives as we could, and I think we did that. And if you want to see more of it, go to revengeofthebirds.com. My highlights article this morning is right there. So I hope it's a happy Thanksgiving for you this week, and your families, and be thinking about all of you. I know Kyle's going down to Slam Diego to be with his family, and you'll have yourselves a wonderful, warm, and peaceful, happy, joyful week. And until next time, may the red rain shower down on you into the red, red sea. Red rain.